Everybody to, oh, there we go. Okay, I want to welcome everybody to this evening's Personal Finance Money Matters workshop presented by Family Promise of the Verdugos. My name is Brian Schwartz. I'm a financial planner. I'm also a college planner as well. And tonight our topic is going to be on college financial aid. It's that time of the year. It's September, and well, now we're a day away from October. It's fall, it's back to school, and I know that school is on a lot of people's minds, whether it's for your own kids, whether it's for you. Maybe you're thinking about maybe going back, getting a different degree, finishing a degree, getting a certificate, going back and getting any kind of additional education. And so whether you're planning for this year to do that, or whether you're planning maybe for next fall, or maybe your kids are up and coming in high school and they're seniors or soon to be seniors, the information that I'm going to be talking about tonight applies to both adults and to younger students alike. The financial aid process is essentially the same, whether you're going back to school or your kids are going to school. It all works in the same fashion. So if this is one of your financial goals to help support and pay for your kids' higher education or your own, tonight's tips and hints are gonna be some good information for you. So let's just jump right into it. It's a topic that we could spend hours and hours talking about, but what I want to try to do is distill down to this hour basically what you need to know about college financial aid. So whether you're going to attend a community college, a private college, maybe you're going to do an online degree, financial aid process in general works the same regardless of the school. Whether you go to a community college, a trade school, you name it, the financial aid process, the forms we have to fill out, the loans that are available to you, the scholarships, the grants are all very similar because it's the same process. So I wanted to show you this picture of myself and my family, only to show you in that when we talk about college and we talk about education, and especially when we talk about it in relation to our kids, time goes by so quickly. So these are my two kids, my son there. This was 12 years ago at my daughter's kindergarten graduation. So this year, my daughter is actually a high school senior, and my son pictured there, he is actually a junior in college now. So, I mean, in a blink of an eye, time passes us by so quickly. Our kids grow up so fast. They're ready for higher education. And also too, for you, if you've been thinking about going to school, I'm sure you've been saying that for some time, and time goes by quickly too. And now's the time to get to it, right? So whether our kids are going to school, whether you're thinking about going to school, let's not let more time pass us by because, man, gosh, my own kids, both of them will be in college here next year. My son's a junior, my daughter's ready to graduate high school, and just like that. So some interesting facts about college. Less than half of all college students graduate from the schools they enter as freshmen. That's sort of an interesting thing. You would think that students would go off to college and finish in 4 years at the same place where they start. They don't have an undergraduate degree. So it's taking students longer to get through college. Over a third of college students drop out before graduating due to financial pressures. That's actually a huge percentage, and that's sort of troubling. But it all goes to show us that, you know, higher education is expensive. And when there are financial pressures involved with education, we tend to put a pause, or we tend to shift our focus back to work and making money, and we don't finish. 10% of students attend 3 or more colleges before finally earning their degree, and 85% of college grads are moving back home. So that son of mine that I just showed you in that picture may be moving into my basement. Who knows, right? But why is this happening? That's what's most concerning. And one of the things is that it's due to finances. So a lot of students are taking longer to graduate because they're having to spread out their college experience, because they're having to start and then stop and then start again and then stop again because of financial issues, because of affordability. So lack of college financial planning. A lot of times students end up transferring and moving schools. Times what they thought was going to be a direct route to a particular career, and they were going to be at the same school for 4 years, just doesn't work out. And the school was not exactly what they had thought it was going to be cracked up to be. Lack of understanding of the complexity of college admissions and financial aid, and really just not understanding the true cost of college and jumping in without taking full advantage of all the resources that are out there. There's just so many schools to choose from. There's over 4,000 colleges and universities across the nation. So between 4-year public and private schools, 2-year public and private schools, community colleges, and so on. I mean, the choices are endless. So there's no lack of options. There's no lack of resources out there. It's really sort of tapping into what is going to be the best path for me, and how can I fit this into my current budget, my current household budget, my current savings budget, my current income budget, and what am I going to be able to afford? This is what average college costs are looking like today. So sometimes we'll see tuition go up in any given year at particular schools by 8 to 9%. Some private schools, you'll see increases of 20% year over year. But on average, the cost of attendance for the average public school is somewhere around $21,000 a year. That's for tuition, fees, room and board. So living on campus, so dorm and meals. Our Cal State system, all the CSUs, there's 23 campuses in California, would range anywhere from $25,000 to $28,000 a year. Again, that's tuition, fees, living on campus, housing, and your meals. If you're thinking about going back to college, obviously you may not be living on campus. Maybe you're trying to juggle part-time work, full-time work, and going to school at the same time. Obviously, tuition and fees would be much lower than that. The big expenses in a lot of these price tags is actually living on campus. So if it's your student going to college and they're required to live there their first year, that's a huge moneymaker for the colleges. Room and board can be anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000+ of the price tag. And that's a huge moneymaker for schools. The UC system ranges, again, tuition, fees, room and board, $35,000 to $38,000. Private colleges anywhere from $38,000 to $70,000, and some of the most highly selective elite colleges, Ivy Leagues, places like USC, can run anywhere from $70,000 to $85,000 per year. So we know that college is expensive. There's no denying that. There's no sort of way around that. On average, the local community college tuition and fees, depending on the number of units that you're taking, can range anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a year. However, California in the last several years has made a huge push to make community college as cheap as possible, if not free, for a majority of California students. So it's definitely a viable, affordable option to work towards finishing an associate's degree, to work towards doing 2 years there, and then maybe perhaps transferring into a Cal State or a UC to finish a bachelor's degree. So that's another affordable option. But just all around, higher education is expensive. Thus the reason to plan and to gather up as much resources as possible. So you sort of heard me talking about cost of attendance, including tuition, fees, room and board. But something else that we also have to factor into the cost that a lot of colleges do not take into account is indirect costs, which is how much are books, how much are other living expenses, transportation, what if I need a laptop, What if I got to buy stuff for my dorm room? They don't really try to line item out those expenses in the overall cost. So depending on your situation, some of those general price ranges, colleges could be, the cost could be higher, could be lower. Here's what financial aid is based on. If your student is going, or if you're thinking of going, financial aid is based on two things. In order to qualify for financial aid, it's either need-based or it's merit-based. So when you do financial aid forms for college, the financial aid forms, first and foremost, are trying to assess your financial need for assistance. So a majority of financial aid is based on income and assets in your household, right? This is independent of GPA, whether you're a good student, whether you're a B student, whether you're a C student, that doesn't matter in terms of need. So the main financial aid form that we're going to talk about in just a little bit, the FAFSA, is solely trying to assess your financial need based on your income and your assets. Has nothing to do with the student's grades, performance in school. What is based on a student's performance in school, whether it's academic or something other like a talent or a special skill that they're involved in, whether it's athletics, is what we call merit-based aid. So grants and scholarships or free money that is given based on grades, GPA, standardized test scores. Maybe they spent 4 years in the marching band. I don't know, 4 years on the swim team. Some schools will give merit-based scholarships based on a student's involvement or academic performance. So these are the two areas that a lot of colleges will determine how much assistance a student needs. So based on financial need and then based on merit aid. I want to be clear when we say the word financial aid, you have to understand what's included in that definition, because this can sort of be tricky. In our minds, whether we're parents or we're students, we like to think that financial aid means, oh, that must be free money, grants and scholarships that colleges are going to give to me. It's money I don't have to pay back. It's money that directly reduces the total cost of college. Colleges do not define financial aid just as free money. So I want it to be very clear here that when a college says we provide financial aid, what that means is their definition of financial aid includes, yes, grants and scholarships. So free money, money we don't have to pay back. But secondly, it includes student loans. And for parents of dependent students, it could mean parent loans, right? So money we have to pay back. And then a third part of this definition is work study. The college giving the opportunity for your student to work on campus, and what they earn is then it goes towards their tuition fees, room and board. So they're working on campus, and what they earn can either be pocketed or it can go towards helping them pay tuition and fees. So all three of those categories are included in the definition of financial aid. So we as parents might think, oh, this is just going to be free money that is going to be just shaved off the cost of college. No, it includes some free money potentially, but colleges also include loans and work study, money we got to borrow and pay back, and money we have to work for in that definition. Okay. So again, I just want it to be clear when we say the words financial aid to a college, that means all three different kinds of monies here. Okay. So here's how a college determines how much assistance and help you get in financial aid. When you do the FAFSA, when you do the financial aid form, we'll talk about the FAFSA in just a second. What they're trying to determine is your ability to afford or to be able to pay out of pocket towards tuition and fees. So they're taking the cost of attendance, they're subtracting out your EFC, which is your expected family contribution. So the FAFSA will calculate your EFC, your expected family contribution. This is what the form believes you should be able to afford based on your income and assets to pay out of pocket. So once the school subtracts what you should be able to pay from their cost, what is left over is your financial need. And then they come up with financial aid for that. So look at my basic mathematic example here. Let's say a school costs $25,000 a year. We do the financial aid forms, and the financial aid forms show, based on our income and assets in our example here, that we can afford to pay $10,000 of our own money out of pocket each year towards that cost of attendance. Now, that's what the form calculates. Whether we have $10,000 or not, whether we can each month save enough money to pay towards $10,000 a year, that doesn't matter. It's just what the form calculates, and that's what the school goes off of. If we subtract that from the total cost of attendance, we pay $10,000. What remains is $15,000. So the school is going to come up with a financial aid package to help us come up with the rest of the $15,000. So that with our 10 and financial aid of $15,000, we can meet the full cost, $25,000, to attend in a year. Okay. That's the basic math of it. So how do they get this $10,000? How do they determine that I can afford to pay that? Here's what they try to assess, right? They assess parent income. If you're a parent who's going back to school, or if you're a parent who has a dependent student who is going to go to school, they're going to look at your income. That's the first thing that they're going to ask about is your income. How much money do you make? What is your adjusted gross income on your taxes? Then they're going to ask, what are your assets? How much do you have in the bank? How much do you have in savings? They're going to look to see how much you've accumulated that might be able to be used to pay for tuition, fees, room and board. Now, if you're doing financial aid forms for a student, they're also going to ask about the student's ability to help pay. So the student income, they're going to ask about student assets as well. So the form is going to assess the parent's income and assets and the student's income and assets. Most of the time for our students, if they're high school, they're getting ready to go to college, they may have a minimum wage job. They may have a part-time job. They probably don't make that much money. You probably don't file a tax return for them. It's okay. They don't make that much. It's not going to affect the forms. Okay, it's really the parent income and assets that are going to determine our ability to pay. Well, what kinds of things are they assessing when it comes to income and assets? First, let's talk about income. So let me give you some examples here in just some general ranges. Okay, for a household of 4, that's going to have 1 student in college, and the parent is 50 years and older, and the parents have less than $50,000 in savings and assets, and the student really doesn't have any income or assets either. If parent income is $50,000 or less per year, your expected family contribution as an estimate is going to be $2,500 per year or less. Okay, so the form is going to say you could probably afford to pay out of pocket $2,500 or less per year. Obviously, the more you make, the more that colleges believe you can pay out of pocket. So I just sort of went up in $50,000 increments just to give you a general idea that if you're in a household with two parents and both parents have jobs, both parents are making income, and you make closer, let's say, combined income to 100,000, well, then obviously your expected family contribution is going to be a lot more. In this case, it's going to be around 15,000. But these are just general guidelines that colleges will use from the financial aid form to figure out how much assistance you need. They're also going to look at certain assets that you have. So let's talk about those assets. They're going to look at your liquid cash, savings, what's in your checking accounts. Do you have any money markets, CDs? Do you have stocks, bonds, mutual funds? Do you have a rental property that makes you money? That's what they're looking to find. All the ways where you've saved up money or you're making money in addition to your job. They do not ask about the value of your retirement accounts. So they don't ask about IRAs, 401ks, and so on. If you own your home, the FAFSA does not ask about the value of your home. So a lot of times parents who own homes will freak out because they think, oh my gosh, I own a home. They're going to ask us to take equity out of the home to help pay for college. The FAFSA does not assess that. Okay. Now, if you or your student are applying to private colleges, there is a second form in addition to the FAFSA called the CSS profile that asks additional questions to learn more about these assets. They will ask about the value of your primary residence. If you rent, that's okay, because you don't own a home, they won't ask you about the home. They'll just ask you, what is your rent? Because they want to see how much of your income is going towards rent versus how much of it could go towards paying for college. They will ask you about the value of your retirement accounts. So private colleges ask more questions because they want to see how much, in how many different ways have you saved up, both for retirement, for college, and basically, how will the price tag of college affect you long-term if they make you pay for it? If it's going to hurt you, then they may say, okay, we need to give this family help because they haven't saved up enough for college. They haven't saved up enough for retirement. So how do you actually apply when your student is ready to go to school, when you're ready to go to school? How and when do you apply for financial aid? So this is where we come to the FAFSA. That stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So what we're applying for here is federal money to help us go to school. So the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, the FAFSA, is the form that you have to fill out for 100% of schools across the nation, whether it's community college, trade school, public, private, 4-year, 2-year, UCs, Cal States, you name it. Every school is going to ask for the FAFSA. You complete this online on the FAFSA website, fafsa.ed.gov, and it opens, ironically enough, it opens tomorrow. It opens in October 1st, and you complete it the year prior to you starting school. So for example, the FAFSA opens tomorrow for fall of 2022. So if you or your student are going to go to college next fall, the form opens tomorrow, October 1st. The document that you need to complete your FAFSA, the main document that you need is your tax returns, your personal federal tax returns from 2 years prior. So for fall of 2022, if you complete the FAFSA, it will be based on your 2020, 2 years prior, your 2020 tax returns. So let's pause here for a second, because sometimes people are confused by this. Wait a second. If I'm going to school in fall of 22, or my student's going to go in fall of 22, why are they asking for my tax returns from 2 years ago, 2020? Well, for most people, we haven't done our 21 tax returns. So the most recent year that all of us have our tax returns finished from is 2020, right? So they don't use this year, they use the year before, right? Because people file extensions and it takes people a long time to get their tax returns done. And so the FAFSA has said, we're going to go back 2 years so that we make sure that parents and adult students have their returns done. So it's sort of weird because they're basing your financial aid off of your situation in 2020, 2 years ago. Your situation might have changed. Maybe you're making less money now. So one of the things that you may have to do, if 2020 was a good year, let's say, and 21, your income has now gone down and you're making less, you may have to communicate to the school's financial aid office that, look, you're looking at an inaccurate picture 2 years ago of what I make in income because now I make less. So I just wanted to point that out, that if your situation has changed, you may want to talk to the college about, look, I'm completing the FAFSA. 2 years ago, I made a lot more money, but now I make less. You need to let them know about that. Once you complete the FAFSA, it will produce what's called a SAR, S-A-R, Student Aid Report. That Student Aid Report is the information, all of your tax information, how much is in cash, checking, savings, all of your assets. That report is then sent to the colleges that you or your student are applying to. And then from that report, the college will create a financial aid package giving you assistance to come attend the school. Okay, so every student is going to have to do the FAFSA. There's a second form, as I mentioned before, called the CSS profile. So let's say we do the FAFSA. If you are applying to a private college, not all private colleges use the CSS profile, but if yours that you are applying to do, you'll have to fill out this form as well. And that, again, is going to be a form that asks about income and assets, and it's going to ask more questions than the FAFSA does. After you do the FAFSA, after you potentially do the CSS profile, the third kind of form that you may have to fill out is the school's own forms. So you do the FAFSA, you do the profile, and then the school may say, hey, thanks for applying. We also need you to fill out these additional financial aid forms. Why do they do this? Because they want to make sure that what you say on the FAFSA matches what you say on the CSS profile, matches what you say on their own forms. So really, it's a way for them to ask additional questions, but then to also check and make sure all of your answers are consistent, right? Depending on your situation, some of those additional forms might be because you're in a household situation where maybe as parents, you're divorced or separated, and you're doing the FAFSA for your student, and your household situation is split. Well, schools want to know, hey, what are the income and assets of mom? Oh, but then she divorced from dad. So what are the income and assets of dad, right? Because before colleges give their own money in grants and scholarships and financial aid, they want to see if the household is split. They want to know, what do the biological parents make in income and assets? Are there step parents involved? Have parents remarried? Right? So they may ask additional questions about new people in the household. Those of you that own businesses, some colleges will want to know financial information on your business. How much revenue has your business generated? Expenses, things like that. So I say this because these additional questions and on forms may pop up just depending on your situation. What are the sources of financial aid? Let's say we do the forms. We've applied to school. We've done the financial aid forms. Where does the money come from? The first place that the money comes from when we do the FAFSA is the federal government. Depending on our income, we could be eligible for what's called a Pell Grant. A Pell Grant is free money, and that could be up to $5,500 of free money. So for example, if our income qualified us and we were applying to a community college, we may get a Pell Grant that covers our entire tuition fees at a community college, right? And we could go to community college for free. A Pell Grant can be used at any kind of school across the nation. It's just federal money. It doesn't depend on the kind of school. Depending on your income, you may qualify for SEOG grants, which is Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grants. That's also free money, money you don't have to pay back. As I mentioned before, the federal government uses our tax monies to give out work study. That's where a student is offered a job on campus. Let's say they work 10 hours a week in the dining hall, right? And they do food service job, or they work in the campus bookstore or something like that. 10 hours a week, what they make, they can either pocket, and that's taxable, or they can put towards their tuition and fees to help them lower the cost of college. The federal government is also the source of student loans. So student loans and parent loans, and I'll go over those in more detail here in just a little bit. The federal government also offers Perkins loans, which are low interest rate loans for students and parents. And then the federal government also gives out parent loans, or plus loans, as they call them, to help parents pay for the cost of attendance. So let's talk about student loans. Every student is offered, regardless of their financial situation, is offered student loans. And I put student in red here to highlight the fact that it is the student's loan. So if you're a parent, this loan would be in your student's name. It's their responsibility. It's not in your name, it's in their name. So going forward, their financial future, these loans are a part of that, okay? So it's their responsibility when they finish school to go into repayment and repay those loans. It's in their name. I've broken it down there in that second bullet point by how much is offered each year in what's called a Stafford loan. So for the first year, all freshmen are offered up to $3,500. Second year, $4,500. And then junior and senior year, or third and fourth year, $5,500. Okay. So a subsidized Stafford loan means that the government is subsidizing or picking up the interest. So interest is not accruing on these monies while the student is in school. So as long as a student is a full-time student, they do not have to start repaying the loan, and interest is not accruing, or interest is not building up each year while the student is in school. As soon as the student graduates or the student goes below half time, then repayment begins. Okay, so for the traditional student who's just going to stay in school, do 4 years, try to graduate, no repayment, no interest is building, and then 6 months grace period after they graduate, then repayment will start. And these student loans have a 10-year repayment period, meaning your student will make monthly payments over 10 years to pay off the loan. The current interest rate on a Stafford subsidized loan is 3.73%. That interest will start accruing once the student has graduated plus that 6-month grace period. So after that time, then interest begins building. Okay. Additionally, there's a second type of Stafford loan called an unsubsidized Stafford loan. And that adds an additional $2,000. So let's say it's freshman year, first year, I get $3,500 in a Stafford subsidized loan. And then I get an additional $2,000 in an unsubsidized loan. So freshman year, I have a total of $5,500 in student loans that I can take out. Okay. But on this $2,000 amount, which is unsubsidized, meaning the government is not paying the interest, interest is building, interest is accruing at 3.73% while the student is in school. So the loan is growing over the 4 years. That $2,000 amount is growing. Okay. So part of it, there's no interest. The other part of it, the $2,000, interest is accruing. Now, you might look at these numbers and go, wait a second, $5,500 total. That in a student loan is not going to take care of the full cost of college, potentially, depending on the price of that college. The federal government limits or puts a cap on these numbers because they don't want students graduating with so much debt. So then that begs another question, which is, Brian, I hear that there's like trillions of dollars of student loan debt. Yes, that is true. So why do students graduate with so much debt for college? Because, not just because we've limited it, but because so many students need additional funding because they can't pay out of pocket. Their parents can't pay out of pocket. They haven't saved up enough. And so they take these federal loans, but then they also have to go get additional monies. So they go to a bank, they go to a credit card, and they go get private educational loans to borrow more money so that they can afford to pay for the full cost of attendance. That's why we end up having so many students having so much debt, because they have to go look for more avenues of money. Okay, so that's student loan. that the federal government offers us. If you're a parent, like I said, they may offer you a parent loan, a plus loan. This is in your name as a parent, not the students. This is your responsibility to get a parent plus loan. They'll do a credit check. They'll check your credit history. It's like you're applying for it. And repayment begins not after the student graduates, but immediately. So let's say I borrow $20,000 for my son. I'm going to have to start repaying that immediately. Right now, the interest rate on it, as I'm repaying, it continues to grow. It grows at 6.28% per year. It's meant to be paid off in 10 years, but I can apply to defer payments if I can't make payments right now. So that's an opportunity for parents. Let's say the FAFSA says I can afford to pay $10,000 out of pocket, and I just don't have $10,000, and I don't have enough money in every paycheck to be able to afford that $10,000 a year. I may have to take out loans. I can get a parent loan. Money also comes from the state. So for California residents, if your student or you decide you want to go back to school, you may be able to, your student may be able to qualify for a Cal Grant. So the state of California gives money to students who attend any kind of school in California. And this is where your need, so your income and assets, match up with your student's GPA. So your student has to have at least a 3.0 GPA by March 2nd of their senior year. And you have to not make above Cal Grant's income limits or income ceiling and asset ceiling. So the way that you qualify for Cal Grant is you have to do the FAFSA, and your student's high school needs to send verification of that 3.0 or higher GPA to Cal Grant. So for example, if you get the Cal Grant and your student is wanting to go to a UC, the Cal Grant for the UCs is just north of $12,000 a year in free money. If you go to a Cal State, it's just north of $9,000. So Cal Grant is a great award for households that have lower incomes, right, and need sort of free money. So make sure that you are on the lookout and your student is on the lookout for the Cal Grant. Also, the state government also provides loan forgiveness programs for students who are studying to be teachers, healthcare professionals, work in public service, or go into the military, civil service. There's a lot of loan assumption or forgiveness programs. So for example, when I graduated college, I had gotten a degree in history, and I was getting my credentials in teaching to be a high school teacher. And one of my roommates was doing the same thing, but he was doing it in math. And at the time, they really needed math and science teachers. They needed math and science teachers in lower test performing schools. And they said, if you commit to teaching math and science in one of our schools here in California for at least 3 years, we will pay for up to $19,000 of your student loan balance. So that's what my friend did. He taught math and science for 3 years. They paid off his $19,000 of his student loans. So there are programs like that that come from the state as well. The schools themselves will often have the ability to provide grants and scholarships as well. So it depends on how much they have in federal and state monies. It could depend on how much they have from alumni contributions. It could depend on how much they have in their endowment and investment funds. Typically, these monies are given out to top students. students who have great academic performance, athletic performance, maybe musical abilities. Like I said before, these are merit, right, based on skill and talent. These are merit scholarships. I'm going to skip ahead. To tax scholarships. When your student is in school, there's a number of write-offs, number of tax advantages when your student is in school or when you are in school that you'll be able to make sure that you ask your accountant, or maybe you have an H&R Block person or whoever is doing your taxes to ask about getting deductions for college. There's a number of different deductions here that your CPA, your accountant would know about. Or even if you use tax prep software, TurboTax will walk you through a lot of these things if you have a student in college, where you can claim certain credits and deductions and save on your taxes. You can write off student loan interest. You can write off tuition payments, things like that. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that's one way that you can get some of that money back to you, is in the form of tax deductions and tax refunds. So the next step would be, if you are planning on going to college yourself, or if you have a student, is one, do your research on the costs of college at those schools. So a lot of schools have what are called college cost calculators or net price calculators. These are on their websites, in their financial aid section of their website, where you can go and you can input your income and your assets, and it will do a calculation based on financial aid equations. It will come up with an estimate of what your financial aid package would be like based on their cost of attendance. That will give you a good initial idea as to what the bottom line cost might be for you or your student at that school. The other thing to do is call that school's financial aid office and talk to a financial aid advisor there or a counselor and say, look, my student is interested in attending your school. They're going to apply. What will the financial aid package potentially look like based on our situation? And they can walk you through step by step how that would look. Obviously, they're going to tell you to complete the FAFSA. They're going to walk you through certain forms, of course, but at least they can initially give you a good idea of what the costs may look like. And then ultimately, what your funding options would also look like, whether it's going to be a combination of free money, scholarships, and how that's going to look at the school. From then you can sort of plan and know, okay, at a UC, at a Cal State, at a private college, this is what the costs are going to look like. That's a much better approach to tackling the cost of college versus just letting your student apply wherever they think they're going to apply, and then they get accepted, and then you then see the numbers and go, oh my gosh, I don't know if we can afford this. So rather than worrying about it, talk to the colleges first. And as you're doing that, help your student better prepare a list of colleges, not only based on where they want to go, but also affordable options for your family as well. So mixing those two things together, where your student is looking to go, along with affordability, is going to make for better success in that college process in the end. If you have questions about what is our financial situation going to look like in terms of financial aid, and it's sort of hard to understand what colleges are talking about, and you have other questions, and you're put on hold and you got to make an appointment and all that sort of thing, if it gets too difficult, feel free to reach out to us here at Family Promise. And between myself, between Lisa, we can walk you through either getting the resources, or I can walk you through how your situation is going to look on the FAFSA. Send Lisa an email, give her a call. You have her contact information. Every time that she emails you regarding one of the workshops that's coming up each month, feel free to reach back out to her. And if she can't get you the answer, she'll pass you on to me, and I'll definitely get you the answer. So between the two of us, we'll make sure that you're taken care of. You have all of your questions answered, whether it's for you, whether it's for your student. Just before we leave here, if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself right now, or maybe even in the chat, feel free to type out a question, and we can spend a couple of minutes here before the hour ends answering any questions you might have.
I don't see any questions in the chat just yet. We'll give them a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, next time I present on Money Matters, we're going to talk about teaching your kids smart money skills. That's going to be October 14th, again, Thursday, 6 p.m. In 2 weeks, teaching your kids smart money skills. And Lisa, maybe there is another workshop in between next week that you want to plug?
Yeah. So next week, which will be October 7th, Charlene Gosling is going to come back, and she's going to talk to us about how to get a good night's sleep after a long day, how to unwind and, just get back to rest and be able to recharge that battery for the next day.
That's amazing. I think we can all use that for sure.
Yes. Yes. All right. So that'll be next week at 6 p.m. Same place, same time. We'll see you guys here, and have a wonderful end of the week.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.